Welcome to this episode of the Humble Rising podcast. I am your host, Arivee Vargas, and today we're diving into something that I know resonates with a lot of you, and it is all about how to stop feeling overwhelmed by your to-do list and all the things on your plate and all the things that you are anticipating that will be placed on your plate. So what if I told you that time management alone will not solve the overwhelm and the stress that you're dealing with in managing all your responsibilities and all those mental tabs that you keep in your brain about everything? And you know what I'm talking about. They're like these little tabs. They could be those fluorescent neon colored tabs that you get to tab your notebook or a book. It feels like the same, or it's like a file cabinet with file folders. And they're all organized, but there's so much there and so many tabs and folders that you have to keep open all the time, or you feel like you have to keep open all the time. So what if I told you that time freedom isn't about managing time itself more effectively? It's really more about aligning your choices each day with what matters the most, and then saying later or not now to everything and everyone else. I know it sounds really simple, and once you're clear, I will admit it is difficult to practice at first. But I also know, because I have personally experienced it, I have seen it time and time again, it gets easier and easier the more that you do it. This is what clients tell me over and over again. And they do this when they reflect on, our time together. And even when I check in with them a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, 4 years later, they say, to do things differently than how I was doing them at first was very, very hard. And then you keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And before you know it, your new habits and your new mindset have replaced your old ones. So today we're going to talk about how having some more clarity around what matters most, boundaries and priorities, can actually create more time freedom, more joy, more energy. And this does not require anything but your own internal shift. It's a mindset shift and then aligning what matters most with what you're doing. So let's start by addressing something I hear often, which is, if I could just get better at time management, everything would be fine. Like I'd finally figure it out and everything would be better. And I understand this well, because I used to say the same thing. And I know others who say that as well, or who used to say that, because you're trying to juggle multiple things. And it often feels like there's never enough time to do everything. And that so often you taking care of yourself falls to the bottom of the list. But here is the reality. Time management is not alone the solution. It's more that you focus on managing time as if it's something you can control, the more frustrated you're likely to feel. So the more you focus on, I have to control my time, I have to control my time, all of my time, the more frustrated you'll likely feel, because one, time is always going to be limited. And there are going to be demands on your time that are unexpected and that throw you a curveball. And you can't control when the curveballs come, right? So what you can control is how you choose to spend your time when you have agency over it. Research shows that you are less stressed if you feel like you have more control over how you spend your time. You may not actually have complete control over all your time, but you will feel less stressed if you feel like you have more control. You have the power to decide what's worth your time on a specific day, week, or month. And I know many of you will say, no, but a lot of my time is dictated by my job and my manager and my leader and the priorities of our team. Yes, all true, for sure. And still, you have some flexibility in there. You get to decide what gets the attention that's required on a specific day. What project gets your attention? What meetings get your attention? What meetings get your presence versus an email update after it's done? There are so many decisions you get to make, even within that limit. There's a limitation there. I think it's so important for us to be practical and realistic about what it means to be in the corporate environment, even in law firm environments. You have less control over your time. What I'm saying is the time and energy that you do have agency over, you master that because you can master that. And that's where clarity, boundaries, and priorities come into play. Because the real shift happens when we start to work on clarity on what truly matters to us, work and home and personally, right? Getting clear on knowing and committing to your top priorities, and then getting clear on and enforcing boundaries more often than not. I'm not one of those, it's either all or nothing. I'm not like that. You know that I don't believe in that. I don't think that's realistic. And I think it gets us into trouble. It leads us to burnout, that kind of all or nothing mindset. So let's break down what I mean when I say clarity, priorities, boundaries. Clarity means that you know what you need to focus on. And most importantly, you know what you do not need to focus on. When you have clarity about what you need to focus on, which really is what truly matters in that moment in the grand scheme of things. So it's going to be tied to your personal values. It's going to be tied to your short-term and long-term goals, both personally and at work. But when you have that clarity, it becomes easier. It becomes easier to make decisions about where you're spending your energy and when you're spending it and how much you are spending at a given time. So, for example, maybe you get clear and you say, you know what? I'm going to focus on prioritizing work-life harmony. You know, I don't use the word balance because I think it imposes an unrealistic standard and a perfectionist standard on people, not just women, but people in general, because it's not an equilibrium. It's never going to be 50-50. All the areas of your life are not going to balance out 50-50-50. That would be 150, so that doesn't make sense. 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, 20%, or 50-50 if we're going for 100%. It is not realistic. And I think when we try to achieve the unrealistic, we always get disappointed. And what happens with us is we just start feeling guilty, shameful, embarrassed, and disappointed with ourselves. That is why I don't like using the word balance. It is what people say. So sometimes I'll use that word because it's what people know. But I would love us to shift into some new language. Language is important. It's important to properly name something because I do think it affects what you believe and then what you do. So if you get clear and say, hey, I really want to prioritize work-life harmony, which for you perhaps means you want to be able to turn work off in the evening as much as possible. For you, more peace. That's something a lot of people will say to me is, I want more peace. I want more calmness in my life. I want more simplification in my life. And for you, maybe more peace means turning work off at a certain time in the evening or even on the weekend. So you start saying no to checking your email after 8 p.m. or checking email during key evening hours when you're at dinner, maybe with friends or with, your significant other, or during a time when you're spending quality time with your family, or you're just having some time for yourself. Maybe that's what work-life harmony means to you in terms of what it actually requires of you in a specific day. Because we talk about work-life harmony, and we talk about these themes and these important things that we want to have in our lives, but we have to be able to put them in real terms and what they would really mean for us in our day-to-day lives. So that's why clarity is not just saying, I want to prioritize myself. Clarity is not just saying, I want to prioritize my self-care. I want to prioritize my family. Clarity is, this is what I'm going to do to make sure I can realize that goal. These are the things I'm going to do differently each week. And of course, I like starting with one thing. So maybe one thing is not checking your email after a certain time. Now, when you're clear on your priorities, you're able to make decisions that honor your time and your energy. And prioritizing means that you understand you cannot do it all, and you're okay with that. You are okay with that. How many of you are okay and accept, I can't do it all? I think many of you are there and many of you are not, and that's all right. But this isn't just about not doing less. You focus on what's most important and let go of the things, even if it's temporarily, that don't align with that. So maybe if you're climbing the corporate ladder, maybe in your career 15, 20 years, you might realize that while you were doing that, getting all the promotions, that's important to you. Being really great at your job is important to you. Continuing to be a leader, an impactful and effective leader, is really important to you. But you also are realizing that spending time with your family and staying healthy, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually fit are just as important, if not more important to you. And that's been an evolution for you, right? Because you have experience, you've lived a little bit, you're like, okay, I see that my work is important and the leader I want to be is really important. And also my family and my health is probably more important, if not on par. And I would argue to say it's likely more important because at the end of your life, it will be the most important. So maybe you prioritize those things accordingly, meaning you then shift your evenings, you shift some of your weekends, you shift how you do work, life, all that, you shift it because now you're seeing what is more important to you, and you want what you're doing to reflect that priority. Because one way I can tell what your priorities are, and you can do this for yourself, is look at your calendar. What do you spend time doing? Where's your energy going in a week or a month? Look at all the things. If there's nothing in there about, hanging out with a friend or, quality time with people that you really care about, you aren't, maybe you're not exercising, but you want to, and you say that's important to you, then your calendar should reflect all of that. I'm not saying schedule everything, but if you were thinking about, hey, I really want to reconnect with some of my close friends that I used to have, and I've lost touch a little bit and I would love to reconnect, look back the past quarter. Have you spent any time with them? Have you spent any time with them? People that you want to reconnect with and you say that's important to you. You see, we have to be doing the things that we say inside are important to us. Because when we don't, we are misaligned. And that's where so much of your internal tug of war and resistance comes from. That's where so much of your internal stress comes from, is the misalignment between the life you're living and the life you want to live, that you're telling yourself you want to live inside, but your behavior and your actions and your habits don't reflect them. We're not talking about an overhaul. Remember, we're talking about one step at a time. And until you're willing to kind of face that and face the truth of how you're doing things and how you want to do them differently, you can't ever progress to the doing it differently if you're not willing to face the truth of how you're doing it right now and what that gap is and how can you start bridging that gap. Now, boundaries is one way, right? Boundaries are so important for protecting your energy and your mental health. You have probably heard me say this before, but it bears repeating that boundaries are just limits that you set to protect what and who matters most to you. And that includes yourself. Without strong boundaries, that you are ready, willing, and able to enforce, your energy will always be pulled in 100 different directions. And setting boundaries allows you to say no without so much guilt and fear and worry, and ensures that your energy is spent on the things that truly matter. The key here, and I know you've heard me say this, the key here is conviction and what matters the most at that time and protecting it. Each day will be different. So when you're anchored with that conviction and what matters most, you can't sway too far away from where you need to be. You can't, because you are so anchored, you're so convicted in what matters most. You're going to maybe go a little bit left, a little bit to the right. You're going to flex a little bit, but I'm going to come back to the center where I'm anchored. Remember that example I gave about shutting down work or email at a certain time? Well, that would be a boundary. And maybe you make clear to your team that if they need you urgently, or you make clear to people that you're working with on a matter, you make clear to them, hey, if you need something urgently from me, the way I work is that you can text me, because between these hours and these hours, I'm usually unavailable. But if you text me and it's urgent, I will definitely get back to you as soon as possible. You may have to adjust that approach depending on your work environment. But the point is that you're getting clear on what matters most to you, and your actions will then align and reflect that. And you are figuring out what really works for me and what works for the environment that I'm in. And not just the environment. I want to be more specific. Sometimes it's your specific team, your group, your department. Sometimes it's the people that you're working with on that project at that period of time, for that period of time. It is not just like work environment broadly. It is more specific than that. And so your job is to figure out what will work for me and how can I still do an excellent job and be there for my team, but not be overly available and accessible when it's not required. Because when you're in acceleration on a matter, or you're in the thick of something and it's like you got 3 days, there's a big deadline, you're in it. You're not going to be not checking your email after 8 p.m. You're going to be checking your email at 9 p.m. Like, that's me being realistic. And I think it's a disservice to you to say no matter what. No is a complete sentence. 9 p.m. is the end of all checking email. That wouldn't serve you, because that's not reflective of how your life is. Because work can creep into every part of your life if you allow it. It does creep into much of it, but we can limit some of that creep. We can limit how far that creep goes, right? Other boundaries could look like, just to give you some more ideas, if you're brainstorming and you're trying to experiment, which is the key, is experimentation. You want to experiment with boundaries. See what works, what feels right. It may feel uncomfortable at first to try, but when you've enforced that boundary, you've set it and enforced it, I guarantee it's going to feel good, because it aligns with something that matters most to you. So going to your daughter's recital, making sure that you are there for that 7 p.m. dinner with your 2 best friends from law school or college or grad school or high school. And you are there at that dinner and you're laughing and you're reminiscing and you're talking about life and all the things and the craziness of life, the craziness of motherhood. And you're like, this is why I protected this time with them. This is why I don't cancel and I show up, because this matters to me. That's what's going to feel good. But you have to have that in your minds and in your spirit when you're doing boundaries and enforcing them. You have to be clear on the purpose. You got to be clear. So setting response windows is important, right? Like, I check emails between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. I'm making this up. You're like, what? Checking emails at 10 a.m.? I got to check them at 7 a.m. Do you? I'm just saying, have maybe a response window. Experiment with that for 2 weeks and see what happens, right? Maybe a boundary you set, and people will say to me, is this really a boundary? Absolutely. asking for an agenda before you accept a meeting. If you're putting a meeting on my calendar, there better be an agenda for it. Now, let's be honest and realistic. If someone is setting up a meeting with you and they're the CEO of the company you work for, no, you're not going to respond and be like, I would like an agenda for this meeting. No, you're not going to do that. We're going to use our judgment here. But I'm saying for most meetings, there should be an agenda with what we're going to talk about. There should be an agenda. And maybe that's something you discuss with your team. Hey, for meetings, let's have an agenda. Maybe it's just 1, 2, 3 bullet points of what we need to cover. If we're going to have to make a decision, if we're brainstorming, what are we going to do? What is the point of this meeting? And why? Can't it be an email? Okay. Now, maybe you want to use Slack or Teams. You can use Slack or Teams. There are these status or auto responders to signal your availability. So maybe it's do not disturb, you're in a meeting, you can click those so that you can protect some of your focus time and do the things that you need to do to move work forward. Again, just using these little tools to free up some of your time and your energy and to protect it. Or maybe you want to block off, your focus time, your thinking time on your calendar, and you treat it like a meeting. You treat it like a meeting with someone that you really respect and you admire. And it could be your focus time, but also could be your workout time, your journaling time. It literally doesn't matter. The point is that you're going to protect it and treat it like a meeting, and you would never ditch a meeting or not show up to a meeting with a colleague. You wouldn't do that. So don't do that to yourself. Why wouldn't you do that? Because you would think it's not respectful. You don't want to disappoint that person. You don't want to seem like a flake. So why would you always be able to do that with yourself? Right? We have to treat ourselves with the same respect and care that we treat other people. And let me go back to calling out the elephant in the room here. If you are in a very fast-paced environment with high pressure and a lot of expectations, and to be very clear, if you're listening, those are the only environments I've actually ever known. Okay. I've never been in a slow environment. From law school through those years of practice and being in corporate, all of that, high pressure, a lot of expectations. And I will tell you that alone doesn't make an environment toxic. Okay. Many leaders and people, me included, thrived in a lot of those environments because we like them. And there are people who don't like those environments and it's not for them. And that's okay too. Right. But here's what I will tell you. And by the way, I'm not saying that those environments didn't have their flaws and didn't have things that were not that desirable. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that on balance, if we looked at it holistically, and if you look at it from a long view, you would say, yeah, like I really did thrive there. And I enjoyed being in an environment where everybody's an A player and that you're playing at simply a higher level in many regards, in many respects. And some people love that. I definitely loved that. That doesn't mean that there weren't issues and things that could have been better. But what I'm saying to you is that sometimes you don't like the environment and you'll never like that kind of environment, but you stay and you complain and you talk about how awful it is. And oh my gosh, and I can never come up for air. And I always feel like I'm underwater and I'm always so busy. I'm always so exhausted. I'm always so stressed, but you stay and you're miserable. And you think that doesn't have an impact on your physical health, but you know that it does. And your mental health, emotional, physical health, your spirit, all of it, because you're so misaligned internally. You may be making a lot of money and you're miserable. So here's what I'll tell you. And you don't need a coach to tell you this, but at some point, if you do not like the environment if you don't like the environment you're in, you have to decide whether you're willing to accept it or not. Will I accept that this is where I am and make the best of it? Or is it time for me to move on to an environment that better suits me and my life and what I want in a work experience? Or maybe you say, I'm not ready to do anything right now, but I am going to reassess in 30 days. I'm going to reassess in 90 days. I'll do a check-in. Because here is what I know. If you believe that your environment expects certain things from you, like 24/7 availability, it will be harder for you to protect your energy and time for what matters most. Yes, it will be harder. It doesn't mean you cannot do it. I have seen it. I have many clients at firms and consulting firms and law firms who do it, but it is harder to do and to maintain in those environments. Your conviction has to be so on point, your clarity crystal clear. You have to know and believe that you're very good at what you do. There are certain things you have to be able to do that. And I'm being honest here. We want to believe that environments will change for us. Listen, they change at a glacial pace more often than not. Do not expect culture to change overnight. As a leader, you certainly can shape the culture and work environment of your team. Woof, you have so much power there and how you shape that. But you cannot alone, single-handedly, change a firm or a company's culture or environment. Again, what is within your sphere of control and what is not? Focus on what you actually have agency over. I know many of you might be also thinking, okay, I get it with the boundaries. I get it. I know I need to make some changes. Okay, I understand, start small. I get that. This is important to me, but I can't say no to more work. There's too much to do. Or maybe you're thinking, if I don't take on more, I'm going to disappoint people. And I don't want to do that. Or everything feels urgent. How can I even slow down for a minute? There's so much on my plate. And I'm sure you have a host of other objections going on in your brain right now, which our mind is so good at that. So good in seeing how something won't work versus why it could work. I get it. Demands are constant and not just at work. You're thinking about all the things in your personal life too, especially if you have kids or you have a pet. Like I get it. You might feel like there's no room for slowing down or pushing back, or that if you don't say yes, you feel like things might fall apart. So let's break this down. If you're thinking, I can't say no, this is too much work to do. Here is what I know you know. Overloading yourself is not sustainable. You know that. You know it. You can't give your best to everything. When I say that, I mean, you can't give your 1000% that you like to give to every single part of your life, every single day for the next 10 years. You can't do that. That is a fast track to, burn out. And then you're out of commission. Then you can't do anything because you're not even functioning at that point, right? But when you get clear about your top priorities and your values, your core values, what really matters to you in life, saying no becomes so much easier. It is not about abandoning your responsibilities. Please, it is not about that. It's about being intentional about where you direct your time and your energy so that in 20, 30, 40 years, even when you're laying on your deathbed, you can say, yep, I spent my energy and time on the people and the things that mattered most to me. Because the only one asking yourself those questions when you die is you. No one else is going to do that for you. If you think that your colleagues, unless you're besties, are going to be there when you die, you're wrong because they're not going to be there. They're not going to be there. You have to focus on what is most important to you. Yes, your job. What are the priorities for me within the grand scheme of this project and this matter? What do I need to focus on right now? What can wait for next week? So instead of focusing on everything at once, prioritize the tasks that align with your goals. When you say no to non-critical things, to non-mission critical things, you are making more space for what truly matters. Now, if you're saying, okay, yep, I'm constantly being asked though to do more, especially outside of my job description. I love that one, right? Yes, you're in charge of this, but I want, because you're so fantastic, I want you to do all these other things. And Arivee, I don't want to disappoint anybody. I want to take on that work. I want to be known for being excellent. You probably already are. That's why you're being asked to do that. But let's put that aside for a second. You do not have to be everything to everyone all of the time. The fear of disappointing others can be really paralyzing, but it is also the thing that drains your energy. Instead of fearing disappointment, ask yourself instead, how can I show up fully in my role without sacrificing my own well-being? You don't need to say yes to everything. Saying yes to everything might lead to, like I mentioned, burnout, which isn't helpful to anybody, including yourself. But saying yes to everything also could impact how good you are doing at all of those things. Meaning, if you take on 3 more cases, 3 more matters, 3 more projects, and you don't have the bandwidth, you're risking not doing well in all of them. And then you say you're so concerned about your reputation and how you're perceived, but you're willing to take on 4 more projects, which increases the risk that you may not do as well on all 4 because you're spread too thin. And it's not about you. It's that anybody who is not a machine cannot do that at 1000%. You are not a machine. You need recharging, you need breaks. You cannot do everything at full speed all of the time. You maybe could do that for a certain period of time in your 20s or even your 30s. Maybe. Okay, for a very short period of time, or maybe for 3-4 years. Who knows? I felt like I could do that in my 20s. Push, 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 push. I felt like I could do that. I had fun. I felt like I could do that. And then I was like, oh no, I cannot do that anymore the way I was doing it before. It doesn't mean I have less experience. It doesn't mean I'm less smart. It doesn't mean I'm less capable. It doesn't mean I'm less talented. It doesn't mean any of those things. I'm not going to make it mean something it doesn't mean. It just means that things shifted for me. And now I need more rest. And now I'm in my 40s. I need a lot more rest. Right? So say if you are, I'm going to continue with your objections that you may be having in your brain. Maybe you're saying to yourself, no, everything feels so urgent. Everything is always a red exclamation mark in the email. Can I just give a piece of advice really quickly? Especially if you are a leader of teams, please don't use the urgent red exclamation mark if it's not truly urgent. I worked with plenty of people in the past who everything was a red exclamation mark. And I'm like, that when you do that all the time, it's like the boy who cried wolf. Like when you do it, people are like, that's not urgent. It's red, but that's what they do. Please just use it sparingly. Use it with intention. It will be so helpful to your team if you do that. Okay, so if you're thinking everything feels urgent, how do I slow down? How can I even do that? And I'm going to say sometimes urgency is external. Like there is something that is urgent that comes up. It's a fire drill. You got to handle it. That's true. That happens. However, I would say that more often than not, urgency is something that we create for ourselves. We create an internal pressure of urgency. The idea that everything is urgent, it leads to your stress. Now, I'm not saying that's the sole source of your stress. It is a factor in stress. But when you take a moment to get clear again on your priorities, maybe for that day, for that week, you will realize that not everything needs to be done right away, but you need to be willing to engage in that exercise. I know many of you, because I speak to so many of you, and that's what I love about this community. Many of you are just delaying. You're delaying that to do more stuff. And then you're doing stuff this week that can most certainly be done next week, which would make this week easier for you. So by setting clear boundaries, you create this space to prioritize and to reprioritize and to reassess. And you'll start seeing that when you align your actions and what you're doing with those priorities, with your goals, you actually accomplish more and with less stress. And if you can't tell already, I'm talking about realistic boundaries. You will hold more often than not. Okay. Boundaries, again, help you protect your focus without jeopardizing your reputation and your credibility. It is not about being rigid at all costs. It is about being intentional. Remember, boundaries are a form of self-respect. When you respect your time, your energy, your space, others will begin to respect it too. Now, what we're talking about, which for a lot of you is a mindset shift, and then backing it up with action, it's not going to eliminate your stress overnight. That's not realistic to say. And it won't suddenly make your workplace slower or easier. It's not going to do that. But it will help you navigate the pace and all the demands from a place of more agency, more power, more clarity, instead of feeling helpless and hopeless and like you're always reacting. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, and if you are driving, obviously just keep driving and keep your eyes on the road. But if you are listening to this and you have a piece of paper or you want to take out your notes app on your phone, write down these questions and you can answer them for yourself. The next time you feel overwhelmed and stressed, pause and ask yourself, does this truly require my immediate attention? Or am I reacting out of habit or pressure? Is this truly urgent, or is it just really loud right now? Is this moving me closer to the leader, the partner, or the person that I want to become? Here's another question. Is this the best use of my time, energy, and focus right now? And part of the answer will be, does it align with my priorities that I've set? Last question. If I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? And is that worth it? Right? I know this mindset shift can feel difficult when you're in the thick of things. And even asking yourself some of those questions and writing down your answers can also be hard to do. But remember, you have agency over all of this. You can decide whether to answer those questions or not. You get to decide. You have agency here. You always get to decide what you do next. That next right step is always your decision. And when you are able to get clear, prioritize your energy, set and enforce your boundaries, align what you're doing with what's most important, you'll feel less overwhelmed. You'll feel more focused. You will feel more energy. I promise you that. But you have to be willing to do things differently and experiment. It is the only way you'll ever know what will work for you, instead of only talking about what doesn't work for you. So as you move through your week, I want you to remember this. You do not need to manage time like a machine. You get to choose how you move through it with intention. You're not here to react to every ping and every pressure. You're here to lead yourself and whoever you're leading at work. You're here to lead with clarity, with intention, with courage, and with alignment. So take the pause, ask the questions, make the choice that honors your energy and your purpose. You don't have to do it all. You just have to do what matters most to you. To you. See you next time.